Impossible, the Emperor breathed. Nothing is impossible when you have 40 years to prepare and the combined knowledge of hundreds of destroyed civilizations, General Phillips said. Every species your empire eliminated left behind pieces of advanced technology. We found them all. We studied them. We improved them. Around the trapped Imperial fleet, more human ships began materializing. These weren't the simple vessels the Corvathians had been chasing. These were warships that existed in several galaxies, simultaneously powered by energies that treated physics as mere suggestions. Captain, Lisa Brown's voice joined the transmission from the bridge of one such vessel. Emperor, I'd like you to meet some friends of ours. The display showed representatives from hundreds of species, all races that had been enslaved by the Corvathian Empire for centuries. They stood on the bridges of human ships, wearing the uniforms of a new galactic alliance. We didn't just free your slaves, Jake Miller explained, his calm smile never wavering. We armed them. We trained them. We gave them ships and weapons that make your technology look primitive. Tony Garcia appeared on another ship's bridge. Every world you oppressed, every species you enslaved, every civilization you thought you'd broken, they've all been waiting for this moment. Amy Johnson's medical bay had been converted into a tactical center where former slaves coordinated attacks on Imperial strongholds throughout the galaxy. Your empire is falling apart from within, Emperor. Your remaining forces are surrendering or joining the rebellion. Emperor Korthval looked at his tactical displays in despair. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Imperial worlds were declaring independence. Entire fleets were defecting to the rebellion. The empire that had stood for 10 millennia was crumbling in a matter of hours. This is genocide, he accused. You're destroying an entire civilization. No, President Carter corrected. We're ending a tyranny. Your people will live, but they'll live as equals among other species, not as their masters. The human constructs surrounding the Imperial fleet began to emit a strange energy. Corvathian weapons systems shut down harmlessly. Life support remained active, but all offensive capabilities simply stopped working. What are you doing to us? Admiral Zexstar demanded. We're giving you what we gave ourselves, Dr. Roberts explained. A choice. You can continue to fight and face the consequences, or you can accept a new reality where strength is measured by how well you protect others, not how effectively you oppress them. One by one, Imperial ships began surrendering. Their crews had seen enough impossible technology to know that resistance was futile. The rebellion had succeeded beyond all expectations, and their emperor's grand fleet was powerless against enemies who treated the laws of physics as optional guidelines. Emperor, Korthval made one final attempt at defiance. Even if you defeat us, other empires will rise. The galaxy will never be at peace. You're probably right, President Carter admitted. But when those empires arise, they'll face something new. They'll face species who remember what freedom costs and who have the technology to defend it. Jake Miller delivered the final words of the war. Emperor, you deployed your best against us. We smiled because we knew something you didn't understand. We weren't just another species trying to survive in your galaxy. We were the combination of every civilization you destroyed, armed with their knowledge and motivated by their desire for justice. The Corvathian Empire officially ended not with explosions or battles, but with a simple announcement broadcast across the galaxy. President Carter stood before representatives of 300 freed species and spoke the words that would reshape galactic civilization. The age of empires is over. The age of cooperation begins now. In the years that followed, historians would mark this moment as the beginning of the Galactic Federation, an alliance built on the principle that no species should ever again face extinction alone. The humans who had smiled in the face of impossible Odds became the guardians of that principle, ensuring that the galaxy would remember the price of tyranny and the value of freedom. The Empire had deployed its best. Humanity had simply been better prepared. Excellent. Dr. Roberts, are our main assets ready? EDR. Sam Roberts checked readings from machines that hurt to look at directly. The Omega platforms are fully operational. We can begin reality restructuring on your command. Phillips nodded. For 40 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. Every human ship, every colony, every seemingly innocent research station had been part of the largest military deception in galactic history. The Corvathian response was exactly what human strategists had predicted. Emperor Korthval had committed every available ship to crush humanity before their true capabilities could be revealed. 10,000 vessels were converging on human space in the largest fleet ever assembled, on the Imperial flagship Eternal. Dominion, Emperor Korthval reviewed battle plans with his remaining admirals. The recent defeats had shaken his confidence, but the numbers were clear. No species could stand against 10,000 dreadnoughts supported by battle stations and mobile fortresses. Your Majesty, reported Admiral Zextar, our advanced scouts have reached the outer edge of human space. They report no defensive positions. The humans appear to be fleeing deeper into their territory. The Emperor's massive claws scraped against the command table. Fleeing or retreating to prepared positions? Our analysis suggests genuine panic, Your Majesty. Their ships are moving away from our forces in disorder. What the Corvathians didn't realize was that every fleeing human ship was actually herding the Imperial fleet toward a specific location. Captain Chris Taylor commanded one of these vessels, leading 300 Corvathian warships on what appeared to be a desperate chase. Sir, reported Corporal Nina Adams from her station, the Imperial ships are maintaining pursuit formation. They're following us exactly where we want them. Taylor smiled. His crew included specialists whose job descriptions would make no sense to anyone outside Project Nightfall. Nina Adams convinced enemy computers that they were actually human computers and should act accordingly. Private Rick Jones carried weapons that existed in quantum superposition until they decided what they needed to destroy. How long until we reach the convergence point? Taylor asked. 17 minutes, Nina replied. The other herding groups are on schedule. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Hundreds of seemingly panicked human ships led Corvathian battle groups toward predetermined locations. The Empire's forces were being carefully positioned for what they believed would be humanity's last stand. On enslaved worlds throughout Imperial space, the revolution began exactly as planned. The Corvathian garrison on Theta Centauri was the first to fall. The planet's 6 million enslaved inhabitants had been secretly armed with human weapons for months. When the uprising began, Imperial forces found themselves facing energy weapons that phased through their armor and explosives that rewrote local physics. Similar rebellions erupted on 800 worlds simultaneously. Species that had been slaves for centuries suddenly possessed military technology that made their oppressors' weapons look like primitive clubs. The timing was perfect. With most Imperial forces committed to the attack on humanity, the rebellions faced minimal resistance. Emperor Korthval received the reports with mounting horror. His empire was collapsing from within while his forces chased human ships through empty space. How did they arm so many worlds without our knowledge? He demanded. General Lexmore consulted intelligence reports with shaking hands. Your Majesty, it appears human diplomatic missions have been operating throughout Imperial space for months. Our security forces thought they were simple trade delegations. Trade delegations don't carry military-grade weapons. No, Your Majesty. But apparently human medical supplies and agricultural equipment can be quickly converted into advanced armaments. The Emperor's rage shook the entire command bridge. "Find me these human leaders. I want to speak with whoever planned this." Deception. That request was answered sooner than he expected. Every screen in the Imperial fleet suddenly activated, showing the same transmission. President Helen Carter sat calmly behind her desk on Earth, flanked by military leaders whose uniforms seemed to shift and change in ways that hurt to look at. "Emperor Korthval," she began, "I am President Carter of the Terran Federation. I believe we need to talk." The Emperor's voice carried across space through emergency communication channels. "Human, your species will pay for this treachery. My fleet will glass every world you've ever touched." "I'm sure you'd like to try," Carter replied politely. "However, I should point out that your fleet is currently surrounded." "Impossible. My scouts report empty space around our forces." President Carter gestured to General Phillips, who activated a tactical display visible to every ship in the Imperial fleet. The display showed the true situation. 10,000 Corvathian vessels had been carefully herded into a sphere of space, only a few light hours across. "You've been chasing our ships for 6 hours," Carter explained. "During that time, you've moved your entire fleet into what we call a convergence zone. It's a very special piece of space. Around the Imperial fleet, reality began to shift. Stars that had appeared normal suddenly revealed themselves as massive artificial constructs. What looked like empty space filled with structures the size of planets. The Corvathians found themselves surrounded by technology that made their most." Advance Emperor Korthval stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His fleet of 10,000 ships sat trapped in a sphere of human technology that defied every law of physics he understood. The stars around them weren't stars at all, but massive machines that hummed with power beyond imagination. "This is impossible," he whispered. "How long have you been building these ... things?" President Carter's calm voice reached every ship in the Imperial fleet. 40 years, Emperor. Ever since we found the first ruins of civilizations your empire destroyed, we've been very busy." Dr. Sam Roberts appeared beside the president on the transmission. His usual friendly manner was gone, replaced by cold determination. "Your Majesty, you should know that we tried to avoid this confrontation. We hoped to remain hidden until we were strong enough to protect other species from empires like yours. But you forced our hand," General Phillips added. "You captured our people. You threatened our colonies. You gave us no choice but to reveal ourselves." The Emperor's claws scraped against his command console. "What do you want? Tribute? Territory? Name your price for our surrender." "Surrender?" Carter looked genuinely puzzled. "Emperor, I think you misunderstand the situation. We're not here to negotiate. We're here to end your empire." Around the trapped Corvathian fleet, the human constructs began to activate. Weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously charged with energy that made stars look dim. The very fabric of space started to bend and twist as humanity revealed the true scope of their preparations. "You have one chance, President," Carter continued. "Order your forces to stand down. Release every enslaved species in your empire. Surrender your weapons and accept supervision while you learn to coexist peacefully with other civilizations." Emperor Korthval's rage finally exploded. "Never. The Corvathian Empire has ruled for 10,000 years. We will not bow to primitives who hide behind impossible technology." "Then you've made your choice," Carter said sadly. "Dr. Roberts, activate the Star Killer countermeasure." The Emperor's eyes widened. "How do you know about the Star Killer?" "We know about everything, Your Majesty. Your ultimate weapon is already en route to Earth's solar system. It will arrive in approximately 6 hours." On screens throughout the Imperial fleet, the humans showed real-time images of the Star Killer, a massive device capable of triggering solar explosions. It was the Empire's most closely guarded secret, launched only when facing complete defeat. That weapon has never failed, the Emperor boasted. Your homeworld will die, and with it, your species' resistance. Dr. Roberts smiled for the first time during the transmission. Emperor, would you like to see what's waiting for your star killer? The display shifted to show Earth's solar system. Where the sun should have been, a structure the size of a small solar system hummed with energies that hurt to comprehend. The star killer approached this construction like a bullet flying toward a mountain. We moved our sun, Dr. Roberts explained casually. It's currently in a pocket dimension, while we use its energy to power our defensive systems. What you're seeing is one of our Omega platforms, a device we built using technology from 17 different extinct civilizations. The star killer struck the platform and simply vanished. Not destroyed, not deflected, but absorbed completely. The energy that should have killed the star was converted into power for humanity's final revelation. Standard Imperial formation, sir. Predictable shield configurations. Their computer systems are already compromised. I could end this in 3 seconds if you want. Admiral Morkith felt ice in his veins. Compromised? How? 10 seconds, Davis. Announced. Admiral, your computer systems have been under our control since you entered this system. We've been reading your mail. Every screen on every Corvathian ship displayed the same message in perfect Imperial script. The species you tried to exterminate have been waiting for you. Time's up, Lieutenant Wilson announced cheerfully. The first Imperial ship didn't explode. It folded in on itself like origami made of metal and energy. The second ship simply faded away as if it had never existed. The third transformed into something that looked like abstract art made of light and mathematics. All hands, abandon ship. Admiral Morkith screamed. His crew ran for the escape pods as their vessels began disappearing around them. Within minutes, 75 warships had been reduced to empty space and drifting lifeboats. Colonel Davis opened another transmission to the escape pods. Admiral, when you report back to your Emperor, please give him this message. Humanity sends its regards. The news reached Corvathia Prime within hours. Emperor Korthfol listened to the reports with growing fury. The second battle group had been eliminated by 12 human ships. The survivors spoke of weapons that ignored physical laws and humans who treated space combat like a casual conversation. Mobilize everything, the Emperor commanded. Every fleet, every battle station, every armed vessel in the Empire. I want 10,000 ships converging on human space. Your Majesty, General Vexmore protested, that would leave our core worlds defenseless. The humans have shown they can strike anywhere. Our only hope is overwhelming force before they can deploy more of these impossible ships. The order went out across the Empire. Fleets abandoned their patrol routes. Garrison forces left their stations. For the first time in its history, the Corvathian Empire was calling in every military asset for a single battle. On Earth, President Carter received the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. They're taking the bait, she told. General Ryan Phillips, the general, studied the tactical displays. 10,000 ships. They're committing everything to this attack. Good. Dr. Roberts, is Phase 2 ready? The scientist nodded. All our assets are in position. The Liberation fleets are standing by. Carter activated a secure communication channel that reached every human ship in the galaxy. This is the President. Operation Lighthouse is a go. Show them what happens when you corner a species that's been planning for this moment since they first left their homeworld. Across human space, ships that had been pretending to be civilian transports began revealing their true nature. Research. Stations transformed into fortresses that existed in multiple dimensions. Mining operations became weapon platforms the true power directly from stellar cores. Most importantly, teams of humans who had been quietly working on diplomatic missions to enslaved worlds revealed their true purpose. For months, they had been distributing advanced weapons and tactical training to species that had given up hope of freedom. Centuries ago, the galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their impossible technology. It was their belief that every sentient being deserved freedom, and their willingness to fight entire empires to prove it. Colonel Davis stood on the bridge of his ship, watching as Corvathian reinforcements gathered for what they believed would be humanity's final battle. Around him, his crew prepared systems that operated on principles the Empire's scientists couldn't even theorize about. "Sir," Lieutenant Wilson reported, "we're receiving signals from liberated worlds throughout Imperial space. The revolution has begun." Davis smiled the same calm smile that Jake Miller had worn in his prison cell. "Then let's give them something to revolt against. Signal all human vessels. It's time to stop pretending we're just another species trying to survive in their galaxy." The Emperor had deployed his best against humanity. Soon he would learn that humanity's best had been waiting patiently for this moment for 40 years. The real war was about to begin. The truth hit the youth Corvathian Empire like a wave of ice water. Every defeat, every lucky human escape, every narrow victory had been carefully planned theater. The species that had seemed primitive and defenseless had been holding back their true power. General Ryan Phillips stood in a command center that existed in 11 dimensions at once. Around him, holographic displays showed the real scope of human preparation. What the Empire had seen as scattered colonies were actually construction sites for weapons that treated solar systems like building materials. Admiral Clark, status. Report. Phillips spoke to the Air Admiral Susan Clark's voice, came from everywhere and nowhere, transmitted through communication systems that worked faster than light by ignoring the concept of distance entirely. All Liberation fleets are in position, General. We have teams on 800 enslaved worlds ready to begin simultaneous uprisings. Report, the Admiral demanded. Our weapons aren't connecting, sir. The enemy vessels appear to be phasing in and out of normal space. Lisa Brown's voice cut through the chaos. Lesson 2, Admiral. When humans study the ruins of extinct civilizations, we don't just learn their history. We learn their technology. We improve it. More dreadnoughts began disappearing. 20, 50, 100. The pride of the Corvathian Empire was being systematically erased by a handful of ships that had pretended to be simple transports. Retreat, Zethkar ordered. All ships retreat immediately. The fleet tried to engage their faster-than-light drives. Nothing happened. Space around them had been locked down by technology that treated the fundamental forces of the universe like on-off switches. Retreat is not an option, Lisa announced calmly. You chose to attack a human colony. You chose to murder 2 million civilians. Now you get to learn what happens when humanity stops being polite. Jake Miller's voice joined the transmission. Admiral, remember what I told you about human history? About what happens when someone threatens our families? Through his ship's sensors, Zethkar could see Jake standing on the bridge of one of the transformed vessels. The human was no longer a prisoner. He wore the uniform of something that definitely wasn't a simple transport crew. We tried to warn you, Jake continued. We answered your questions honestly. We told you exactly what our capabilities were. The problem is, you never asked about our intentions. Another wave of dreadnoughts vanished from existence. A crimson fleet, undefeated for 3,000 years, was being destroyed by an enemy that had let itself be captured just to study Corvathian weaknesses. This is impossible, Zethkar whispered. You're a primitive species. You have no advanced technology. Amy Johnson's voice joined the conversation. Admiral, we've been listening to your communications. Your empire has detailed records of every species you've conquered. Did you ever wonder what happened to their knowledge, their discoveries, their final desperate inventions? The Admiral's scales went pale as understanding dawned. We found them, Tony Garcia added. Every piece of technology your victims created, every scientific breakthrough, every weapon they built but never got to use. We studied it all. Lisa Brown delivered the final revelation. For 40 years, humanity has been collecting the intellectual legacy of every civilization your empire destroyed. We didn't just learn from the dead, we finished their work. The last thing Admiral Zethkar saw before his flagship vanished was Jake Miller's calm smile. The same smile he'd worn in his prison cell when he'd known exactly what was coming. The Crimson Fleet, terror of the galaxy for 3 millennia, ceased to exist. In its place floated 12 human ships that looked nothing like the simple transports they had pretended to be. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous prey is the kind that lets you catch it first. News of the Crimson Fleet's destruction spread through the Corvathian Empire like wildfire. 500 dreadnoughts had simply vanished. No wreckage, no survivors. No explanation that made sense to Imperial scientists. Emperor Korthval himself called an emergency session of the High Command. In the Empire's capital city, on Corvathia Prime, military leaders gathered in a room that had witnessed 10,000 years of conquest. Never before had they met to discuss defeat. "Explain to me," the Emperor hissed, his massive form towering over the assembled generals, how a primitive species destroyed our finest fleet. General Vexmore, commander of Imperial intelligence, displayed holographic recordings from the battle. "Your Majesty, our analysis suggests the humans possess technology far beyond our understanding. Their weapons operate on principles our science cannot identify. That's impossible. Our spies observed their colonies for months. They have basic fusion drives and primitive computers." "Yes, Your Majesty. But it appears they were hiding their true capabilities." Emperor Korthval studied the recordings. The human ships had moved through space like ghosts, ignoring physical laws. Their weapons had deleted matter from existence without any visible energy discharge. "How long have they possessed this technology?" "Unknown, Your Majesty. However, our interrogation of human prisoners suggests they've been preparing for galactic contact for decades." On Earth, President Helen Carter stood before a joint session of Congress that had been sworn to secrecy. The representatives sat in stunned silence as she explained what humanity had really been doing since first reaching the stars. 40 years ago, she began, our deep space exploration teams discovered something disturbing. Throughout the galaxy, we found the ruins of hundreds of advanced civilizations. All had been destroyed by various galactic empires." She gestured to Dr. Sam Roberts, who activated a holographic display showing ancient artifacts recovered from dead worlds. "At first, we thought these ruins were just archaeological curiosities. Then our scientists began studying the technology fragments we found. We realized these civilizations had achieved scientific breakthroughs that made our best theories look primitive." Senator Margaret Hayes raised her hand. "Madam President, are you saying we reverse-engineered alien technology?" "Not reverse-engineered," Dr. Roberts corrected. "We completed it. Most of these civilizations were destroyed before they could finish their greatest projects. We found their research notes, their prototypes, their final desperate attempts to defend themselves." The hologram shifted to show laboratories hidden deep beneath the Earth's surface. Machines that seemed to bend reality operated in chambers that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Project Nightfall became humanity's insurance policy. President Carter continued, "We studied every fragment of advanced technology we could find. We built upon the work of species that died fighting galactic tyrants. We prepared for the day when those tyrants would come for us. Back in Corvathian space, panic was spreading through the outer territories. Reports flooded in of impossible defeats. Battle stations that had stood for centuries simply went dark. Entire fleets vanished without sending distress signals. Admiral Lorketh commanded the 2nd Battle Group, stationed near the frontier worlds. His sensors detected 12 ships approaching his position. The vessels appeared to be human in design, but they moved through space in ways that violated everything he knew about physics. Incoming transmission, his communications officer reported. The main screen activated to show a human male in his 30s. He wore a uniform that seemed to shift colors depending on how you looked at it. Behind him, other humans worked at stations that appeared to be operating themselves. "I am Colonel Mike Davis of the Terran Defense Force," the human said. "You have 60 seconds to evacuate your crews to escape pods." Admiral Lorketh laughed. "Human, you face 75 Imperial warships. Surrender now, and we may show mercy." 50 seconds, Colonel Davis replied calmly. "You're insane. 12 ships cannot defeat a full battle group." 40 seconds. "I should mention that we've been monitoring your communications. We know about the slave worlds you've been using for target practice." The Admiral's confidence wavered. How could these humans intercept encrypted Imperial transmissions? 30 seconds, Davis continued. "My weapons officer is getting impatient." Through the view screen, Morketh could see a young woman at what appeared to be a weapons console. Lieutenant Kate Wilson looked up and waved cheerfully at the camera. "She's new," Davis explained. "Still excited about field testing our latest toys." 20 seconds, another human added. This one wore sergeant stripes and was checking displays that seemed to show the interior of every Corvathian ship simultaneously. "That's Sergeant Dan Lewis," Davis said. "He specializes in creative solutions to complex problems." "Dan, what's your assessment?" The Crimson Fleet arrived at New Haven like a storm of metal and fire. 500 massive warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Each dreadnought was 3 miles long and bristled with enough weapons to destroy. A planet. Admiral Zethkar stood on his command bridge, looking down at the small human colony below. New Haven was home to 2 million humans. The planet had basic defenses and a handful of patrol ships that looked like toys compared to his fleet. "Open a channel to the planet," Zethkar ordered. The main screen flickered to life. A middle-aged human man appeared, sitting calmly behind a simple desk. He wore civilian clothes and showed no signs of panic despite the armada hanging above his world. "I am Governor Ben Parker of New Haven Colony," the man said. "I assume you're here to talk." Zethkar laughed. The human's composure amused him. "I am Admiral Zethkar of the Corvathian Empire. You will surrender your world and all human colonies to Imperial rule. Resistance will result in complete extermination." Ben Parker nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Well, Admiral, I'm afraid we'll have to decline your generous offer." "Decline?" Bextar snarled. "You dare refuse the Empire?" "We do," Parker replied simply. "However, I'd like to request 24 hours to evacuate our civilians." Surely the mighty Corvathian Empire can grant that small mercy? Zethkar considered. The request showed proper fear, even if these humans hid it well. Granting evacuation time would demonstrate Imperial mercy before the inevitable slaughter. It would also make excellent propaganda for other species watching across the galaxy. 24 hours, the Admiral agreed. Then we demonstrate what happens to those who oppose the Empire. The transmission ended. Around the command bridge, Corvathian officers laughed and made jokes about human stupidity. They positioned their ships in a perfect bombardment formation, turning the coming battle into entertainment for Imperial citizens watching from across the galaxy. Down On New Haven, evacuation ships began launching from spaceports around the planet. The vessels looked old and simple, converted cargo haulers and civilian transports. To Corvathian eyes, they seemed barely capable of spaceflight. One of these ships was piloted by Captain Lisa Brown. 3 hours earlier, she and Jake Miller's crew had executed the most daring prison break in Corvathian history. They had escaped by convincing the ship's computer that they were actually maintenance workers who needed to repair the cell locks from the inside. "Control, this is Evacuation Transport 7, Lisa spoke into her communication system. "Beginning. Departure sequence." "Copy that. Transport 7, came the reply from the planet's surface. "Fly safe out there." Lisa smiled as she guided her ship away from New Haven. In the cargo bay behind her, Jake Miller and his crew prepared for what would come next. Tony Garcia worked on systems that shouldn't exist on a simple transport vessel. Amy Johnson checked equipment that had no clear purpose. How long until the fleet realizes we're not actually evacuating? Jake asked. "About 30 seconds after the shooting starts," Lisa replied. "Think they'll be surprised?" "Probably," Tony said, making final adjustments to his console. "Most species don't expect their prey to bite back." Aboard the Corvathian flagship, sensor operators watched the human evacuation with boredom. The ships moved slowly and showed no threatening behavior. Some officers placed bets on how quickly the planet would burn once the bombardment began. "Admiral," reported the sensor chief, "we're detecting some unusual energy readings from the evacuation ships." Zethkar glanced at the displays. "Define unusual." "The readings don't match any known technology. However, they're very faint." "Probably just poorly maintained human engines." The Admiral dismissed the concern. Primitive species often had unreliable technology. He was more interested in planning the victory celebration. That 20-4 hours passed quickly. The last evacuation transport cleared New Haven's atmosphere just as the deadline expired. The Corvathian fleet moved into final attack position. "All ships, prepare to fire," Zethkar commanded. "Target all major population centers. Leave nothing standing." 500 dreadnoughts powered up their main weapons. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains began to glow with deadly energy. The sight was magnificent and terrible. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust focused on one small human colony. "Fire," the Admiral ordered. The first salvo lit up. Space like a newborn star. Beams of superheated plasma lanced down toward New Haven's surface. The planet's thin atmosphere offered no protection. Within minutes, cities became lakes of molten glass. Forests evaporated. Oceans began to boil. The bombardment continued for an hour. When it finally stopped, New Haven was a dead world. Its surface glowed red-hot from pole to pole. Nothing could have survived such destruction. "Excellent work," Zethkar announced to his fleet. "Transmit images of this destruction to all human colonies. Show them what defiance costs." That's when the sensor alarms began screaming. "Admiral!" The sensor chief shouted. "I'm reading massive gravitational distortions throughout the system." "What kind of distortions?" "Unknown, sir. They're building behind our fleet formation." On the main screen, space itself began to ripple like water. Reality twisted in ways that hurt to look at directly. The Corvathian instruments couldn't identify what was happening, but they could measure its scale. The distortions were enormous, larger than planets. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "the evacuation ships have stopped running. They're turning around." Zethkar stared at the tactical display in confusion. The simple human transports were indeed reversing course, heading back toward the Corvathian fleet. It made no sense. They had no weapons capable of threatening Imperial dreadnoughts. "Open a channel to the lead evacuation ship," he ordered. Lisa Brown's face appeared on the screen. She was smiling, the same calm, confident expression Jake Miller had worn in his prison cell. "Admiral Zethkar," she said pleasantly, "I hope you enjoyed your target practice. Your world is dead, human. Your people are extinct. Why are you returning to die with them?" Lisa's smile widened. "Admiral, you made a critical error in your intelligence gathering." "What error?" "You asked us about our military capabilities. You asked about our weapons and our ships. You asked how many soldiers we have." Lisa paused. "But you never asked the right question." Zethkar felt his blood turn cold. "What question?" "You never asked what we've been doing for the past 40 years while we explored dead civilizations. You never asked what we found in the ruins of species your empire destroyed centuries ago." The evacuation ships began to change. Metal plates shifted and unfolded like mechanical flowers. Hull sections rotated to reveal systems that definitely hadn't been there moments before. The simple transports transformed into something completely different. "You wanted to see what humans can do when threatened," Lisa continued. "Here's lesson 1. We don't evacuate our people. We relocate the battlefield." The transformed ships opened fire with weapons that broke several laws of physics. The first Corvathian dreadnought didn't explode or burn. It simply ceased to exist. Deleted from reality by technology that treated matter and energy as mere suggestions. "Impossible," Vextar screamed. "Our shields are impenetrable." A second dreadnought vanished in a flash of impossible light. Then a third. The human weapons bypassed shields, armor, and every known defense. They didn't destroy their targets. They edited them out of existence. All ships returned fire. Zethkar commanded. The Crimson Fleet unleashed everything they had. Plasma beams, fusion missiles, and particle cannons filled the space between the fleets. The barrage was powerful enough to sterilize entire star systems. Every shot passed harmlessly through the human ships. Admiral Zethkar stood before the massive viewing screen in his command center. His black scales caught the light from distant stars as he studied the reports floating in front of him. The Corvathian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. No species had ever challenged them and won. The latest intelligence files made him laugh. A new species called humans had appeared in the Outer Rim. They had small ships, basic weapons, and colonies on only 47 worlds. Their technology was primitive compared to the Empire's might. "Look at this," Zethkar said to his officers. "They use fusion drives that barely reach light speed. Their weapons fire metal projectiles. They have no energy shields worth mentioning." Commander Vextar, his second in command, examined the data. Their military consists of only 3 million soldiers across all their worlds. We have more troops on a single battle station. The reports came from Captain Jake Miller's captured transport ship. The human vessel had been taken 3 days ago during a routine supply run. Miller and his crew of 23 were now prisoners in the ship's holding cells. The Corvathians had questioned them for hours, learning about human capabilities. Down in the prison cells, Jake Miller sat quietly on his metal bench. The guards had beaten him twice, but he showed no fear. His pilot, Lisa Brown, occupied the cell next to his. She had tried to escape once and earned herself a broken rib for the effort. "They think we're weak," Lisa whispered through the bars. Jake smiled slightly. "Let them think that." Tony Garcia, their engineer, nursed a swollen eye from his interrogation. "They asked me about our ship designs. I told them the truth. We build them simple and reliable." Amy Johnson, the ship's medic, checked Tony's injuries through the bars. "They don't understand us at all." The Corvathian guards found human behavior puzzling. Most species begged for mercy or raged against their captors. Humans did neither. They sat calmly, answered questions honestly, and showed no signs of breaking under pressure. Back on the command deck, Admiral Zethkar received a priority message from the Empire Council. The holographic images of 12 council members appeared before him. Each represented a different conquered species that now served the Empire. "Admiral," spoke Council Leader Mergath, "we have reviewed your report on the humans. The Council has made its decision." Zethkar bowed his head respectfully. "What are your orders?" "Deploy the Crimson Fleet. End this human expansion before it becomes a problem." The Admiral's eyes widened slightly. The Crimson Fleet was the Empire's most elite battle group. 500 dreadnoughts, each capable of destroying entire planets. They had never lost a battle in 3,000 years of service. "Is such force necessary against this primitive species?" Zethkar asked. Mergath's expression remained cold. "Better to use overwhelming force than to underestimate a potential threat. The fleet will serve as an example to other species who might consider rebellion." Meanwhile, on Earth, President Helen Carter sat in her secure office beneath the White House. The morning briefing had brought disturbing news. The transport ship New Dawn was 3 days overdue. Long-range sensors had detected unknown vessels near the last known position. General Ryan Phillips entered the room, his face grim. "Madam President, we've confirmed hostile contact. Our people have been captured by an alien empire." President Carter set down her coffee cup. "How do we know this?" "We received a coded transmission from Captain Miller before they were taken. He managed to hide a message in what appeared to be routine engine telemetry." Dr. Sam Roberts entered the room carrying a classified folder marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Most people in the government had never seen such markings. Those who had learned not to ask questions about them. "Mr. President," Dr. Roberts said, "we need to discuss Project Nightfall." Carter nodded. She was one of only 12 people on Earth who knew about Nightfall. "How long do we have?" "Our deep space monitors show a massive fleet moving toward our outer colonies. 500 ships, each the size of a small city. They'll reach New Haven in 6 days." General Phillips studied the readings. Their technology appears advanced. Energy weapons, faster than light travel, defensive shields. A standard military response would be suicide. President Carter looked at Dr. Roberts. "Is Nightfall ready?" The scientist's expression remained neutral. "The question isn't whether it's ready. The question is whether we're ready to use it." Back aboard the Corvathian flagship, Admiral Zethkar prepared for departure. The Crimson Fleet had assembled in perfect formation. Each dreadnought bristled with plasma cannons capable of melting continents. Their shields could withstand direct hits from stellar explosions. The human prisoners were brought to the observation deck to witness the fleet's departure. Zethkar wanted them to understand the hopelessness of their situation. "Behold the might of the Corvathian Empire," the Admiral announced. "Your species will surrender or be destroyed. There is no third option." Jake Miller looked out at the massive warships with calm eyes. "Impressive fleet you have there. 500 of the finest warships ever built," Zethkar boasted. "Each one carries enough firepower to glass an entire world." Lisa Brown studied the formation with a pilot's eye for detail. "They're beautiful ships, very intimidating." The Admiral found their responses unsatisfying. Where was the fear, the despair, the begging for mercy that usually followed such displays? "Do you not understand?" Vextar demanded. "Your entire species faces extinction." Amy Johnson, the medic, spoke quietly. "We understand perfectly." Tony Garcia nodded. "You're doing exactly what we expected you would do." Zethkar felt a chill despite his scaled hide. "What do you mean?" Jake Miller turned away from the viewing screen. "Admiral, has anyone ever told you about human history? About what happens when someone threatens our families? Your primitive history means nothing to the Empire. Maybe not, Jake said with that same calm smile, but it should. The Crimson Fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into the void. Destination: human space. Mission: complete conquest. On Earth, President Carter signed a document that officially did not exist. The order activated protocols that had been prepared for 40 years, but never used. Deep beneath the planet's surface, machines that operated on principles beyond current science began their startup sequences. Dr. Roberts checked his watch. The fleet will reach New Haven in 5 days, 18 hours, and 37 minutes. Will our people be ready? The president asked. General. Phillips activated secure communications to military bases that appeared on no maps. They've been ready for decades. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what comes next. In the depths of space, the Crimson Fleet traveled toward what they believed would be an easy victory. Admiral Zethkar reviewed battle plans and calculated how quickly they could process human surrender documents. He had no way of knowing that. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since their first steps into space. The ruins of dead civilizations had taught them valuable lessons. The most important lesson was this: sometimes the best defense is to let your enemy think they're hunting prey when they're actually walking into a trap. The trap had been 40 years in the making. Soon, the galaxy would learn why extinct species had left warnings about waking things that preferred to sleep.